Okay,
Yep.
I'm sharing my screen now.
I got it. Okay, I see it behind you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. So that's what I was going for. Okay, so we're going to talk today about this STORIFI cheat code, which the STORIFI cheat code, as I've told you before, is really the basis for everything that happens within the STORIFI community. So that's orientation at the top, as it says, is we read this tool starting top to bottom, left, right. Okay. So under that orientation, to the left where my mouse is right now, that is the audience. And we talked about that before. Audience is the primary concern anytime you're trying to put together a story, because without the audience, who are you giving the story to? Who are you presenting it to? So the audience is the primary concern, and we have to analyze it to the extent that we can and figure out who they are, what are they susceptible, and what are they open to based on who they are, where they come from, their background, for example. And even the language, the lexicon that we use in speaking to them is going to matter based on who they are. That's to say, like, for example, to address a group of African Americans who are highly revolutionary or highly liberation minded, and to address them using old Negro slang type language in the slurs and the vernaculars is really not going to endear that audience to us unless it's done in a particular way. So the thing is to identify who you expect your audience is, identify all the variables that you can on that population, and make some type of adjustments to your delivery based on who that is.
Okay.
So that's the audience piece, because, you know, they have to receive it, but people receive things based on who and where they are.
Right.
So you have to meet them where they are in the way you deliver that message. Okay, so that's the audience, and we're looking for, you know, how do we reach them? Because that's what it's all about.
Okay, well, you already started at first by understanding the key, and then you talked about the theater mask over there, which is under the key. Okay,
and so that's what we're doing now, trying to understand this key.
Right.
So one, understanding the key, and we're doing that now. We've talked about the audience. Next to the audience, we look at the rocket ship. And you'll notice the rocket ship is actually the avatar for you. It's because you are the vessel that has all this content that you've accumulated over the years through your lived experiences, because that is where your stories come from. Everything that you've experienced is a story. It meant something, and it's logged, and you still have access to it, even though you may have to go through various layers to get it. It's still there. Okay, so if we're looking at the rocket ship being our vessel, and everything that we've known, come in contact with, learned throughout our lives is our content pool to draw from, then now all we really need to do is segregate and organize that content in a way that we can actually now present a coherent story to whoever our audience is. Along those lines, we're going to always think beginning, middle, end, because that's the way we accumulate knowledge, the most common way there is. So since we're talking about our central themes and the content that's all contained within our spaceship or our avatar, let's now look at what stories there are in those central themes, and within those stories, what are the beginnings? Within that story, what would be the middle? Within that story, what would be the end? So we're talking about that one central theme and we're now kind of in our minds organizing it in a way that could be a story.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions so far?
No, that actually helps you see if it makes sense to even you as you're writing the story.
Yes, exactly.
Like doing your own editing.
Exactly. Yeah. And now, mind you, you hadn't gotten to the point that you're actually writing it, but you're thinking about
formulating it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So let's go down here to the how to use this tool point. And the number 3 says gather your content and apply any STORIFI resources to flush out the critical elements. That's basically what we're doing. We're looking inside our avatar, inside of ourselves, to see which events that have occurred throughout our lives we want to turn into a story. There are plenty, but we have to figure out where we're going to start, what we're going to work on. And then we pull that out, break it out into possible beginnings, possible middles, possible ends. Okay. So we're also on step 4, it says decide what type beginning and ending works for your expected audience. Back to because it all goes back to the audience. So as we're looking at this, our content, and looking, and let's say we found a hook that we want to address as a story. Now that let's say it was the time that Uncle John got shot because he went to the cafe. That hypothetically, that's it. So now we're looking at this, all we know about this Uncle John situation. How did it start? When did we begin to come into knowledge of it? Maybe that's where we start looking at a beginning, but we also want to look at what type beginning. So let's go over to the next column here. In this row right here, this is the beginning row. So the type beginning, do we want to make a statement with our opening? Do we want to use humor in our opening? Or do we want to ask a question in our opening? So our beginning is going to be one of those variables. It's going to be.
So it could be a title or it could be an intro.
Yes. Well, all of it's going to be an intro, but
I mean, intro, like when you say a humorous story or something, it could be like more than a one-liner.
Absolutely. It could be a whole joke or something. But it's the point is you're infusing humor as the opening.
And what's drawing people? What would draw, like a title of a book, what would draw a person to this story?
Exactly. Exactly. But now we have to keep in mind who's this audience. Because that's going to determine what type of opening we may want to use. If it's a bunch of funeral directors, I don't know, maybe they are very humorous people, but just off the top, you may think funeral directors, they're going to be dull and boring. So maybe humor may not work with them. I don't know. But as we do our analyzation of the audience, we will know what is most likely to be the best reception when we open our story. Okay. So let's say we figure out that we're going to use Uncle John got shot, and instead of opening up with a statement, oh, Uncle John really was good, he did this, and we're actually going to go to a question. What I like about opening with a question is it causes immediate action and activity with your audience.
Engaging.
Ask the question, an open question, you immediately focus that on how that affects you. For example, if you ask the question, what would you do if your uncle went to the cafe and got shot down right in front of you? Well, automatically you're thinking you're in the situation, seeing your uncle getting shot down, and you formulate opinions and ideas and issues regarding that. So to me, that's the real strength in the question. But so you choose whichever one of those is going to work best for you based on what you know of your audience. Okay. So once we've chosen our beginning, back to over what our central themes are, back to what our speech or our story is all about. Now let's look at whatever that topic is. Back to Uncle John. What do we want? What 3 points do we need to make about in this story about Uncle John being shot? Is it about the kind of person Uncle John was? If so, okay, that could be main point one. Is it about the family that Uncle John is leaving behind? Okay, if so, that can be point number two. If it's about how not to get yourself in a situation that puts you like Uncle John being shot at the cafe, maybe that can be main point number three. But the point is, you're identifying what is important, and so important that if no one remembered anything about your story, those three things are going to shine through because they're the bedrock of why you're speaking in the first place.
Right.
Okay. So those are your 3 points. Yes.
This I get, the organization of all that. When I find it, when you redid it, so I could read it left to right and how to use it to all that. This I get.
Yes. Before we've even written anything, we have an idea how we're going to open, what 3 points we're going to make, how we're going to close.
And close it, right?
Okay. So we have that going in. Now let's actually get to work.
Okay.
Okay. So we talked about a minute ago. We talked about the theater mask representing the audience and how important it is to identify who's in the audience and how we're going to communicate with them. Okay. I'm not going to belabor that point. There's a couple of things that are there, but the main thing is they have to be the beginning in order for your end to be what you want it to be.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Content. Okay. Step two. So we first analyze the audience. Okay. We're going to be talking to, or at least we have an idea. So therefore we know how we're going to formulate our lexicon and how we are delivering. Step two, now we're looking at inside of our spaceship. Remember, all the stories we have are there. Let's say we're doing Uncle Joe. Let's take out Uncle Joe, and now let's actually sit down and sit with the story of Uncle Joe. What do we know? Do we have all the information we have? If so, cool. Then we can just start our analysis right there. If we don't have all the information about Uncle Joe we need, then we have to go and find someone who does. How can we fill in these empty spaces we don't have? Oh, Aunt Sally is still around. Let me call up Aunt Sally and ask her these questions because I want to tell this story about Uncle Joe, but I need to know this piece and this piece and that piece. And then I have the rest already inside of me. I can fill out the rest. Okay. So we're flushing that whole thing out. Okay, now we just talked with Aunt Sue when she told us those pieces of the story that we don't have. I have the other pieces inside of me, and anything that I can't actually put a pin on, then I'm just going to have to kind of find a way to mesmerize that into the story that I'm building. Okay. So then we go to step three. Now the real work. This is the content extraction, grinding, smoothing, categorizing, beating, everything that we have to do to this content to make it the wordsmith type of product that we're going to come out with our first draft. Okay. So now, when we were doing our initial wash through, we said we were going to do a particular type of beginning. So we take that beginning. What did we talk about? Uncle Joe. Did we say we're going to
ask a question?
Have a question? Okay. So what question are we going to ask that is going to make our audience think about if they had an Uncle Joe and they dealt with a situation like getting them shot down in front of them, how would it work with them? So let's come up with a question regarding a family member who's coming under some kind of great injury right in front of you, and you can't do very much about it, or whatever it is, however you formulate that question. So we do that. you look at it from this angle, from that angle. Does it cover what I want to cover? Do I think people are going to understand what the question that I'm really asking or trying to get to, or not? So let's say we're going to start here. We're going to say, if your uncle or what would you do if you're walking down the street with your mother and someone walks up and shoots your mother right next to you? What would you do? Let's say that's hypothetically the question we're going to use. Okay. We ask that question and we watch the response. Okay. All right. It may work.
Watch the response.
The response, or what you expect the response will be. Because when you deliver something like that, you want to give people a minute to take it in, kind of mull it over within themselves before you're going to move on. Otherwise,
Storify is interactive.
Say again.
Storify is interactive.
Well, right now this is just you, and you are with a mock audience.
Okay.
Okay, so everything is still internal right now.
Okay.
So what do you think? Remember, with the audience analysis, we said, what audience do you think you're going to have?
Right.
So model based on the audience you think you're going to have, because right now you don't know, unless you're developing this for a particular set audience, and you're developing this for the family reunion. Okay, you know who's going to be there. You can't go up in the family reunion with a whole lot of profanity and all this other kind of stuff. So you have to adjust to that. So it's the same process, regardless of who the audience is. You need to know who it is so you can adjust your delivery to encapsulate them.
Okay.
So we've got our beginning, we've got the question, we think we have a good idea what kind of response. Okay, now what are our 3 points? If your 3 points are that the kind of life he lived, your point 2 is his family. Point 3 is how not to put yourself in a situation like that. So those are our 3 situations. Okay. So now let's take those apart and let's examine them. If we said the kind of life he lives, okay, there's some things that we can put together and figure out what the evidence on that is. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. It tells a story in and of its own. His family, pretty clear. He had 6 sons, 7 daughters, whatever it is. How were they doing? Was he there in their lives? Was, the various things that you can take a look at, analyze, figure out how you want to say them. Again, that they're supporting your points. So you move on to the next one. So you do that for each 3. Then we go to what? Next, the ending. And we do that same thing that we did in the beginning when we thought about our beginning. So we've gone through 3 steps: audience analysis, content analysis, which is internal. We may have to get some outside input, but it's basically internal because you are the avatar.
You're collecting
all these messages and communications.
Right.
And then we actually take that information and we expound on it. Now we actually are getting into the nug work of what is that beginning. Now we're actually wordsmithing it. No, maybe if I came out and said it this way, it would be more effective. If I used a particular vernacular here, they would know what I'm talking about because I know the audience and they love that, whatever that is. Those kind of things. Now you're actually really massaging and smoothing, grinding off the rough edges, adding some here, taking some away there until you finally get to what it is that you're looking for or what you feel satisfied with.
Okay.
Okay, now.
Wait, hold on a second.
All right.
Story, step 2, you would choose 3 crucial points. Okay, so at the top, we're in the red bar where it says 3 steps. Is that just a repeat? Because these are the 3 steps that are mentioned in every module.
Yes.
So
yes, and it's a reminder. It's as simple as 3 steps.
Okay,
Don't
got it.
try to make it any more complicated. It's 3 steps. Now, I want to point your attention down to the bottom, that note. Once you have selected a beginning type for your story, you choose 3 crucial points that within the story that you select. And then you choose the type ending for the story. Now you build the complete story in outline format. You've already said what you're going to do. From there, you begin putting the flesh on the bones of your beginning, your crucial steps, and your ending, which is what we just talked about. That's the content extraction, grinding, smoothing, where you're wordsmithing. What is it that you want to say? How can you say it more powerful? You know, those kind of things. And then once you've done that, now you write your first draft. So you've been through the 3 steps. Now you're writing your first draft based on everything that you just went through.
Yeah, you've gathered all the information, you've organized it, you've edited it and all that, and now you're ready to put it to pen.
Yes.
And how do we do that?
Now you take out your, and I suggest, because there's a kind of a connection when putting pen to paper that you don't get when you're putting fingers to keyboards. I suggest you write it down. Yes. Yes. So now you've already gotten your outline. Now we're going to flush things out. Find in your 3 critical points. Find the meat. Add some more meat. Add some more meat. The next critical point. Find the meat. Add the meat. Add some more meat. Each of those. Because as you're adding the meat that supports your central theme or your critical points, you're giving more and more leeway for your edits. Because as you go through it all, you'll find that you want to have more information than you need to make your story. So your 3 critical points, you want them to be robust enough that you don't have to tell everything in the story, and you'll have backup information on each of those 3 critical points.
Okay, so
that makes sense.
I'm clear on all of this, but the actual beyond the organization of it and beyond the writing it down and knowing exactly what you want to say, how do you utilize Storify to create that online?
Oh, okay. So, all right. So I think what you're asking is, once you've created, what do you do?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So once you've gone through all this process, you've gotten all of your data together, your story together.
I'm ready.
Down. You've done your first rough draft. You now practice that draft. Okay. You're videoing, practicing that draft.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
So as if you're the audience.
Yes. Well, no, as if you're the speaker, the audience is in your mind, you've already identified who the audience is.
Right. But I mean, when you play it back, you'll see what the audience would see.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So now, so you've developed it. Now you actually present it and you're videotaping yourself now you play it back. You see where your flaws are. You see the weaknesses in your story. Oh, I said this, but I really should have said this, or I want to beef this part up, or maybe I can back off a little bit on this.
This happened. How do I actually create the story is what I need to know.
Okay. So you will be actually creating this on your device, whatever your device is.
Okay.
Once you created it and gone back and forth, you're going to upload it to Storify.
Got it. Okay.
Once it's uploaded to Storify, now the members of your cohort are going to be able to see what you presented. They'll see what you presented and they'll make comments. They'll say, oh, I really love the way you did this. Do you think you could do this on that? But comments.
So this is YouTube 2.2 body, right? Instead of
this is a community where everybody is here doing the same thing. So therefore, when you post your story, someone else is going to see it and say, hey, wow, that was really nice the way you did that. I like this and I like that. But do you think you could do this and you could do that? You take that. I hadn't thought about that. That would add a real big boost to what I'm already doing. Now you go back, you reincorporate, you reshuffle, you restack, you repost. Now what do you think? oh, but I saw someone else who did X, Y, and Z. So it's a constant state of development until you get to know this
I
is it.
said what I said.
That's it. Exactly. I don't need your input because I've covered everything I need to cover.
I asked you nothing. I said what
Right. No, put that in your story. But in the end, everybody ends up with a product that they created from their own personal experience, their own knowledge, their own work. They've actually sat down with the ideas and the content that they've been accumulating over a whole lifetime, and they analyzed it to see what it meant to them. And now, if it meant something great to them, it's probably going to mean something great to their grandkids or, you know, someone else within their same circle.